Good morning, Ade. Thank
Uh,
you so much for joining me this morning. As you know, we're chatting this morning ahead of TTG's Fairer Travel Month, which is coming up fast in July. And over the month, we're going to be promoting what more the travel industry can do, both in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and broadening their appeal to different customer groups, but also around sustainability and some of the wider practices and the ways in which they can contribute to a smarter, better, fairer travel industry. So thanks for joining us. And I know you've recently become an ambassador for Spain and for the Spain for All campaign. Would you like to just talk that through a little bit and tell us why you've done that and what you've been doing so far as part of the campaign?
yeah. It's an ambassador for Spain for All campaign, not Spain itself. Although if there's a vacancy in that job, I'm ready to take it. It's not like
You
you.
and me
It's not
both.
like you. But no. So the Spain for All campaign is it's really exciting because it's basically a campaign where Spain and their tourism industry are wanting to do as much as possible to make it the most accessible tourist destination for people with disabilities. And what could I say? What I really admire and thought was so good about this is the fact that one, they sought out someone like myself who's had a lot of experience in travel and has a disability, and really wanted to pick my brains. I think what they wanted to do is draw upon my 25, nearly 30 years of travel experience, 20 years of traveling in the industry, or of making travel documentaries and making travel programs, and really asking me how they can do better, what they could do better. And what that says to me is that Spain and Spain for All, the tourist industry in Spain, are serious about trying to make their tourist industry work for people of all disabilities. They're actually, it's not lip service. They actually want to do something and make this happen, and that's exciting. It's great because I've been in the industry, as I said, for over 2 decades, and
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone try to do this or be as focused as they are in what they're doing. And off the back of it, they've set up an advisory board which is going to meet quite a few times over the course of the year, which have got it consists of experts in the industry, but also people with disabilities with lived experience
Yeah.
who can advise and talk and help them create a strategy and a plan, to cater for all people with disabilities.
Yeah, so great maybe to see a tourist board not just using this as a kind of marketing tool, but actually walking the walk, if you like, and
Yes.
practical advice out there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's we all know how annoying it is when we hear this, people saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this diversity and inclusion stuff," and it always feels like something that they're just doing for show. It feels to me for that Spain for All and the Spanish Tourist Board are taking this properly, this seriously, and they want to see some outcomes. So, we hopefully will find ways of measuring, what they're doing each year to see
Yeah.
how their progress is going on.
Yeah, and I guess coming back to your own lived experience, you must have seen a lot of barriers to travel over the past 20 years or so then.
Yeah. I, I think the main barrier would be the attitudes of non-disabled people who work in the industry, when it comes to people with disabilities.
Mm.
Many occasion, I still see it now. When I turn up to an airport or to any sort of travel hub, um, there can be a visible gasp from the people who you're meeting, who are the face of the of that travel hub, in
Yeah.
that. and they look at you as if, oh, this is going to be extra hassle. We're going to have to there's going to be certain parts of our organization, or the way we our protocol that we're going to have to go through, that's going to take longer. It feels like we're seen as a burden whenever someone who comes with a disability is there, rather than a customer, a paying customer
Yeah,
who's looking for a
yeah,
good service,
yeah,
and I think once we can overcome that barrier, and that comes from giving these people, the staff, the tools, the experience, the knowledge, the training,
yeah.
to be able to deal with people with disabilities. We're just people. We're just like everyone else
Of
out
course,
there,
of course.
and
Yeah,
also hiring more people with disabilities.
yeah.
Hire more people with
That's a
disabilities to
great
work
point.
in the tourist industry.
Yeah.
That way, they will see some of the pitfalls and mistakes and stop them happening before they even happen.
Yeah, yeah. And why would you say more travel businesses, be that an airport or be that a tourist board or hotels and resorts, why haven't more travel businesses sort of responded to this and are approaching, disabled customers more positively and seeing this as an opportunity? What are the barriers there?
I've been thinking about this a lot because, when I turn up, and the journey doesn't go as smoothly as it should do because of mistakes that I think are easily rectified.
Mm,
And I kind of like wonder, and I'm like, they know me. I'm someone who travels a lot.
mm,
Why would you give me a second class service? And I can only assume it's a couple of things. I think there is this unconscious bias, a little bit of prejudice, which people don't often know or see, but it comes out unconsciously,
mm,
because of perceptions that society have with disability.
mm,
Um, I can also see it's probably on a purely economic basis. They probably think, well, disabled people don't make up, or people with disabilities don't make up as big a chunk that we need to really see them as a priority. Our priority is non-disabled people because they bring X amount of money to our industry.
mm,
But
mm.
when you delve into the stats and you look at the Purple Pound stats, of how much the disabled pound is worth, I
Yeah,
think it's over 200 billion.
yes, that's right.
Is the
Yeah,
spending power
yeah,
for disabled households each year in the UK. And
yeah,
the industry, I think, is really short-sighted,
yeah.
for them to look at people with that kind of potential spending power and ignoring us or giving us a second-rate service.
Yeah. So there's a bit of fear maybe around that.
Yeah,
There's an investment required for travel companies.
it's a bit of fear. Are we going to make that money back? So, they weigh up the stats and say, is it worth it? Lack of training, which leads to negative preconceptions to people with disabilities. But also just I know, yeah, you're right. It is the fear thing, but that's it. The worry of making mistakes.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
I hear this a lot. A lot of companies are worried about, oh, we might get something wrong.
Or they
Like
might offend they might
yeah,
offend a disabled traveler somehow.
my answer to that is speak to us,
Mm,
talk to us.
mm,
You know, do your research, find out what your customers want and need. I'm sure they've done that, for, you see the tourist industry, the tourist board caters for specifically for 18 to 30-year-olds. It caters for retired people. It caters for families. It caters for many, many different groups of people. Yet it hasn't really looked at the disabled community.
yeah,
And that to me is just it's an oversight. It's something that's really it's silly. It makes no economic sense. And
yeah,
if you want to get this right, speak to us.
yeah,
Speak to
yeah,
us, do surveys, do your market research,
yeah.
go out there. And I don't necessarily mind people making mistakes when it comes from a good place.
Yes.
What I don't like is when they don't bother at all. And
Yeah.
they just make assumptions. One of the biggest assumptions that's made is also that people with disabilities come from one homogenous group, that we are all the same, that all our needs are the same. Oh, we just need to get like an extra chair or something like that. What about people with visual impairments? What about people with disabilities, neurodiverse people? You know, what about people who are who are deaf, or and what about families with disabilities? You know,
Mm.
you have to look into all of this, you know, but if you get it right, it's going to benefit your company financially,
Yeah.
but also it's just the right thing to do
The
for
right thing to
society.
do. Yeah. Yeah. And your first bit of advice is to talk to people. I mean, it may not always be easy to talk to the right people, I guess. Are there any authorities, any associations, anything, anywhere companies, should go to for advice, do you think, in this?
Yeah. Well, one, we got the Spain for All campaign now.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
one.
yeah. After this period of time, the campaign will be gathering a lot of data and a lot of knowledge and experience in the needs that disabled people have, and they do want to create a conversation between the UK and the Spanish tourist boards.
Yeah.
But then, if you're looking for bodies in the UK, Scope. Scope are a fantastic organization, you know, with lots of data and stats and information on what on the needs of disabled people. There's also WizKids, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they do a lot
Yeah.
of stuff through for kids from a or for disabled people from a
Yeah.
teenage perspective as
Yeah.
well. And then there's a growing number of entrepreneurs who have disabilities who are setting up their own travel
Yeah.
companies. You
Yeah.
know, seek them out, find them, chat, do your
Yeah.
work, do your research.
We've done some work before with Angus at Limitless Travel. I don't know if you know those
Perfect.
companies,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
I, I think Angus has been doing some work with the Spain for All campaign as well. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, good stuff. And have you seen any particular pitfalls that companies can fall into, when they're looking to appeal to disabled travelers?
Yeah, I think I did mention one of them, and that was assuming that all disabled people are just one homogenous group, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and just like basically not looking it should be a bespoke service. You provide a bespoke service for non-disabled people.
yeah,
You generally, you know, look at what they need, if they're a family, if they're an OAP, or even for people with lower incomes, but you don't look at us as that group. One group or part of the disabled community that I think is overlooked a lot is families.
mm,
Families with a disabled member in. Not only a few weeks ago, my family, I've got a 3-year-old son,
yeah,
myself, my wife, and my 3-year-old son. We were trying to book a room at I won't name it, but a well-known hotel chain, and we were trying to book an accessible room, and we were told that they only had an accessible room or a family room, but they didn't have an accessible family room.
right,
Right. We could either have either or.
yeah,
In the end, we ended up having to get a family room, so my son would have a bed and to be able to sleep in.
yeah,
But they wouldn't, and I had to like fight my way into a tiny bathroom.
mm,
That's
mm,
not good enough.
mm,
That
mm.
is not good enough. Are you saying that disabled people are not allowed to have families, or people with disabilities
Oh,
aren't parts of families?
sure,
It's nuts. It's
sure.
nuts. How can you make such a basic error?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure you've had a lot of those kind of experiences over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah, definitely. You know,
Yeah,
and you know, with also with transport, in terms of being left on planes, there's so many stories of disabled people who've been left on planes and stuff. So yeah, it's frustrating. There's a lot of work to go
yeah,
to be done, and a long way to go. And that is a big part of the reason why I accepted becoming an ambassador for the Spain for All campaign
yeah.
to try and change this in some sort of way.
Yeah, yeah. So, any advice to travel companies on areas that they should invest in?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's everything really. I think the whole transport infrastructure. Listen, I say this quite a lot. The truth is, we live in a world that is not built for people with disabilities.
Mm.
And we
Mm.
have to find a way to reconstruct it so it's truly inclusive for everyone.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, the moment I step out of my or roll out of my front door, out of my house, which I've spent loads of money at my own expense to make accessible,
Yeah.
I enter a world that is not built for me.
Yeah.
Curbs, pavements that are not set up for me, public transport that is not set up for me,
Yeah.
buildings that are not set up for me. And that has to change.
Yeah.
They're all part of tourist industries. When we go and visit cities and towns and coastal regions, you can't get onto the beaches.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't get into the old towns. And I say if and when people say, oh, it's really difficult, it's complicated, some of these places are old, they're listed buildings. Hold on, the Colosseum has got a lift in it. This is a building that's over 2,000 years old. If they are prepared to find a
Yeah.
way to make themselves
Great
accessible,
example.
do
Yeah.
not tell me that you can't do something
Can't put it in a
at your
two.
peer
Yeah.
in your local town or saying that just put in a ramp or something. Even the Acropolis has now got a lift, so you can go up and see the Acropolis and the Parthenon,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they've relayed the marble surface, so it's now a smooth surface for people with wheelchairs and mobility impairment to move around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's no excuse anymore to
Yeah.
not try and make a comprehensive change in all of your systems. And if you do, you're then going to be opening the market up for millions of people with disabilities. It
Yeah.
works for all of us. It's great for you economically, and it's great for us as a service.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just before we finish, just talk a little bit more about the positives then and the best experiences you've had, because we can see behind you that Travel Media Awards, very nicely placed, by the way, trophy that.
Not on purpose. That was total accident, actually. Total accident. I just suddenly have loads of stuff and shove it behind me. And since everyone started doing all of this Zoom stuff, I've realized you've got to be careful what you've got behind you.
It's pretty good. You've got your intellectual books there on the other side. They look,
Intellectual books.
looking good. But you're obviously a seasoned traveler, Addy. I mean, what are the best experiences you've had, and why? Who got it right, for you when you've been traveling?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it might seem like I've been moaning and chuntering a lot on this little conversation we've had about all the pitfalls and the mistakes in the industry. But when you meet great people who are prepared to, learn, ask questions, and go out of their way to make your travel experience work and be the best that it can possibly be.
Mm,
Um, it's incredible.
mm,
Because the other thing you've got to remember, for a lot of people with disabilities, to travel, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. We have to do logistically, we have to do a lot more, make sure a lot more things work and a lot more things are right, in order to go in terms of getting our mobility equipment right. Some people, it might be their medical stuff that needs to be right. So it's a massive, massive challenge. So when you go away and it doesn't work and things go wrong, it affects us way more.
yeah.
But then I mean, I've been to resorts, like I remember I went to Kenya,
Mm,
and uh I was in this was it Kenya? Well, it was no, it was Mauritius. And Kenya did this as well, in Kenya as well. And they had these huts which are on the beach huts, really lovely, but they didn't have a ramp to get out onto the beach or a pathway to get out onto the beach. And I remember arriving and pointing it out to the staff. They were horrified. They said, "We'll get our technician onto this." And
Mm.
whilst I was in my room unpacking, I just heard a load of hubbub going on outside, banging and bashing. And
Mm.
literally, as I was unpacking, they were building a ramp. They were making it happen, you know.
Yeah.
And it's you meet people who have the can-do attitude.
Yeah.
They don't look at you as a burden,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
see you
Fantastic.
and they think, how do I? It's about hospitality at
Mhm.
its hospitality at its purest, regardless of who you are. They're like, okay, you need a ramp. Okay, we need to make this a bit more accessible.
Yeah.
Let's change our
How can
times.
we look after our customer,
Yeah,
regardless of their needs? Yeah.
yeah, and
We put
and
the customer
sometimes this
first.
can be done. Sometimes this can be done on the hoof. If
Yeah.
you've got great leadership at the places that you're working
Yeah.
at the hotels, at the various locations,
Yeah.
then they will make it happen. And I have seen that
Yeah.
along the way on numerous occasions.
But that wasn't because you were making a documentary or something. It was all on the TV then, that
No,
particular.
no. So a lot of these is just when I've gone on personal holidays,
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that they've done this.
Yeah.
In fact, like when I'm making a documentary, I actually don't fuss as much about the access because I've got a lot of other stuff on my mind, unless it's specifically about access.
Yeah.
But when I'm going on a holiday that I'm paying for out of my own money,
Yeah.
it's got to be right, and then I will kick up a fuss.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great point. Great point. Okay, well, thanks, Ade. We really appreciate you sharing some of those tips and thoughts ahead of our Fairer Travel Month.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks.
We look forward to talking again. Cheers.
Speak to you soon. Cheers.
Bye.